Hello everyone, my name is Garvin and I watch things and natter on about them on the internet for your entertainment. Today we're continuing our look at mermaids in pop culture, as voted for by my ever-wise patrons, whose ranks you can join for as little as $1 a month, link in the description. And we're going to be looking at something that's a bit more on the dark side of mermaid lore today. After all, for every story about mermaids engaging in, quote, romance, unquote, with humans and marrying their legged true loves, there's also a story about mermaids drowning and eating people. Or in this case, just tearing their hearts right out of their chest. Today I'm tackling the 2015 Polish film, The Lure. Although I should note it didn't reach the United States until February 2017, and even then only saw a limited theater release. It was also screened in the 2016 Sundance Film Festival, as well as the 2016 Fantasia International Film Festival. So, it's had an interesting release schedule, let's put it that way. With all that said, let's go ahead and wade into this. The Lure is set in 1980s Poland and is about two twin mermaid sisters who give their names as Golden and Silver. They befriend a rock band going by the name of Figs and Dates and are convinced to work at the shady club that the band members play at, and they're convinced to take roles as strippers and backup singers. Now, interestingly enough, they don't hide the fact that they're mermaids. It's part of the act. They actually pose naked for pictures in their mermaid form at one point in the film. So, fair warning, this is a fairly adult film and you shouldn't show your kids this movie, at least in my humble opinion. This makes Golden and Silver so popular that they're soon overshadowing the band that found them, and they change the name of the act to The Lure, with the human band members playing backup to the mermaids as they use their siren singing abilities, and combined with their dancing, this seems to regularly drive their human audience into intensely overpowering emotional releases, because we see audiences just driven into frenzies in this film. This amuses our two mermaids, and at first they regard this as just a temporary stopover before swimming across the ocean to America, which they seem to regard as the land of warm, sandy beaches. I guess they're aiming for Florida or maybe California, who knows? However, things go quickly off course as Silver falls in love with the band's bassist, and Golden, well, she just can't stop eating people. Which is not the normal problem rock stars have, or at least I hope not. This adds layers of danger and complexity to their situation, and they also run into another sea creature, a Triton, who is going by the name of Triton because he's inventive like that. He's living in Poland and making a living as the lead vocalist for a metal band, and he warns them that, hey, if you fall in love with a human and that human runs off with another girl and gets married, you'll turn into sea foam. Which, wow, that must make romance a really fraught thing among mermaids, unless this is only a thing that happens when a mermaid links up with a human, in which case, I can kind of see why mermaids would want to stick to just tearing our hearts out. It's safer for them. Now that said, there is a way to avoid being turned into sea foam. Find the dude who rejected you and kill him before the sun rises after the wedding. So, you know, he gets what's the happiest day of his life, and then the last day of his life, all at once. Efficient. Silver, however, disregards this warning and pursues her human love, while Golden can't stop eating people, as I mentioned before, and this gets them attention they don't need. This puts them in danger and causes stress, not just on their relationship to the band, but their relationship to each other and to the band members' relationships with each other, because they're now all locked in with these two ladies, one of whom has decided she'd rather be a monster. And that's a problem. Of course, this being a horror movie, it's gonna end in tragedy. But since this film isn't as old as Splash, and I would like you guys to go watch it for yourselves and tell me what you think, I'm gonna stay a little vague on the details here. That said, let me talk about the cast for a bit. Originally, the movie was written with a pair of teen actresses in mind. But after discussions with the director, she and the producers decided that there was just way too much going on these roles, and they were too dark and heavy for your average teen actress to carry. Not to mention, I'm kind of grateful they went with adults, considering that a lot of the time our two lead ladies are topless. Fair warning. Instead, our two leading actresses, whose names I'm posting on the screen to avoid butchering, were chosen over 2,000 other young ladies who auditioned for the roles. Now, our leading ladies here, they were in their early and mid-20s, and they weren't new to acting. In fact, they had actually acted together in two earlier movies where they played characters with intense relationships to each other, so they were not strangers to each other, and they knew how to kind of make you believe that they were sisters. And honestly, they knock it out of the park. The acting in this movie is great. For the mermaids, a lot of it is their body language, which the director puts a lot of emphasis on. For example, Golden's body language is more predatory. Her gaze is harder and more direct. She lowers her eyebrows when she's looking at someone and has a more leaning forward body posture, creating a more aggressive air about her. She also does things like avoiding physical contact with others and maintaining a slightly greater distance than usual from humans. So the only people she actually physically gets close to are Silver and Triton. This helps makes it clear that she doesn't consider humans her equals. Silver, on the other hand, slightly widens her eyes when she's looking at people and smiles more. And she also stands very upright and makes more physical overtures to people around her. She's more willing to touch and be touched. This creates the impression that she's more fond of humans and possibly gives us more moral weight in her private estimation of things. These two ladies are carrying the weight of the movie, and they do it fantastically. Another fun thing to note here is that mermaids actually have eel tails instead of fish tails, and those tails are a mixture of practical effects and CGI. Although in an interview, it's noted that they did build full tails for the actresses to wear because they felt that ensured that the actresses' movements on screen would be believable. Honestly, I feel that was the right choice, although I do tend to lean more on the practical effects side whenever possible. The eel tails were chosen by the director, whose name I've finally placed on screen for you to see. I'm avoiding saying her names because I have a long history of just mangling Polish. Like, I had a roommate in the Marines who was Polish, and he was very unfond of my attempts to learn words in his language. So I'm just gonna leave that alone. But she chose those tails because she wanted the mermaids to come across as more disturbing and dangerous, rather than as pretty or exotic. And she said repeatedly that she was inspired by Polish folklore traditions that casted mermaids as the sisters to dragons. Now, I may have forgotten, because I've gone through a lot of mythology, but I don't remember that particular fact as showing up on any of my video series. And I don't remember reading it in any of my sources. So I'm going to assume this is a Polish tidbit that just didn't get translated to English, which is incredibly unfortunate for me because this particular piece of mythology sounds pretty metal. While the movie hits plenty of the darker themes of mermaid myths, having mermaids as the temptress and predator who devours her victims, there's also the mermaid as the victim here as well. They are exploited by the humans around them for their voices and physical attractiveness. You can certainly see the influence of the Little Mermaid in Silver's relationship with the band member, but we'll get to the Little Mermaid in its own time. It also has a fair bit of themes from the director's and the writer's life, as both of them grew up in and around Polish nightclubs, and covers some of the emotional themes of Poland in the 1980s without going too much into historical context. This was a conscious choice by the director because she felt that would take the story out of the mermaid's journey, and she didn't want to lose that because she felt the mermaid's journey was the emotional core of the story, so she wanted to stick to it. She also wanted to use the mermaids as a very loose metaphor for what it means to grow up as a woman, how a woman's body changes as she becomes an adult. And this movie does poke a little bit of fun with Western society's obsession with the bodies of young women. This isn't the first time this has been done, but this does seem to be a growing modern theme for mermaids, standing in as a metaphor for changing into a woman, or the whole feminine mystique, or however you want to put that. And I do need to mention again here, there is a fair amount of nudity and sexual themes in this movie. So maybe put the kids to bed before you watch this. Because Silver and Golden are both exploring different parts of their sexuality throughout this movie. Golden is mostly using it as a weapon and a hunting tool, while Silver is experiencing the problems of trying to create a relationship across rather daunting boundaries, and she's playing for very high stakes. This is also apparently the first musical filmed in Poland in decades, with the last one I could find being filmed in 1986. That film was never translated to English, so no idea if it's any good or not. Most of the other Polish musicals I could find were filmed in the 1930s, and there's this huge gap from the late 30s to the 50s in the Polish film industry, and talking about why that is definitely outside the scope of this video. Getting back, my point is they took a heck of a risk on this film. A lot of people told them horror musicals was not something that could be made in Poland, and it was something that could really only be filmed in America. While I am a patriot, I'm glad those people were wrong. I just don't think horror musicals is something that requires the unique American touch to make, and I think The Lure helps prove that. Now, at 90 minutes, this is a fairly fast-paced film, but it doesn't careen out of control. It builds towards the ending that, honestly, you should see coming, but it still manages to land convincingly. If you think you might enjoy a horror musical and you don't mind nudity and a bit of blood, this might be your movie. As for the gore, for the most part, I didn't find it excessive, and I'm not a horror movie fan. That said, there is a surgery scene in this movie that could be pretty disturbing for a lot of people to watch, so keep that in mind. But as long as you don't have a phobia of blood, and if you do, please feel free to skip this movie. Take care of yourself. But otherwise, this movie shouldn't be too bad for you. I did enjoy the movie, however, and I do recommend it. With that, I think this is the best place to stop this week, and I hope you found this video informative, or at least entertaining. If you did, please leave a like, a comment, or even subscribe. All of these help me in my eternal struggle against the dread Lord Algorithm. Dare be on his name. I'd like to give a special thanks to Big Steve, who is my biggest patron supporter, in several senses. I hope you enjoyed this review, big guy, and if you see the movie, let me know what you thought. Next, we're going to wander back into romantic territory by looking at the Chinese film, The Mermaid, from 2016. I hope you'll join me, but until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and of course, keep reading.